Have you ever looked in a mirror and you were a little put off by your expression? Or looked at yourself in the mirror and realized that the person looking back at you is you? I walked beside my friend, and as we walked, we talked. I can't remember what we talked about, but all I remember is this bland, superficial conversation about nothing in particular. Conversations like these bothered me. It didn't seem real to me, just like sounds, verbal things that hold no real meaning. As I thought about our conversation, I wanted to make it more real for me, to give our little talk some depth. And just before I asked her a meaningful question, I tripped. I startled awake, rubbed my eyes, and glanced at the clock, but the time didn't register in my head. I realized that I needed to go to the bathroom. I shuffled over, dragging my feet to be sure I didn't trip or stub my toe. Flicked on the lights, squinting from the brightness, relieved myself and turned on the faucet. I ran my hands under the cool water and threw some water on my face, picked up the towel and wiped my face off. As my eyes adjusted to the light, I looked at myself in the mirror, and my reflection was smiling at me. I considered that I might have been dreaming or hallucinating, but my cold, damp hands and the pain of the bright light was all too real. I did what I would usually do in this sort of disbelief and rubbed my eyes some more, hoping I was still just a bit drowsy. Nothing changed. I looked at myself and was quite curious. I felt my face with my hand to see if I was actually smiling. It certainly didn't feel like it, though. Normally this would creep the hell out of me. I would, on any other occasion, scream or run away, but I just stared at the reflection, looking into my eyes if they weren't mine. A genuine happiness. I haven't felt that in far too long. I felt calm, but suddenly, as though something dropped to the ground, the feeling of calm had broken. Like a shattering vase, a feeling welled up inside of me. A tightness in my chest, like someone had just punched me. It was one of a gurgling frustration. I would be happy if it weren't for this stupid house. Things constantly broken, and this wretched family. It all torments me every day of my life. That's when I heard the voice of my father from a couple of days earlier. Because I said so. The words resonated in my mind. I could feel my teeth gritting, and the sound made my skin crawl. But the reflection just kept smiling back, taunting me. The shrill sound of my mother's voice beckoned in a continuous annoying ringing in my ear. I shook my head to clear my thoughts, but the ringing was still there. I peered over at the clock and looked at the time. 2:34. 2:34. 2:34. 2:34? It's late. I couldn't possibly sleep now. I was simply too stressed. I had school tomorrow, but I had to deal with this first. Let me sleep, I muttered, half to myself, half to the voices in the face in the mirror. This was when I noticed that the mirror had stopped reflecting my actions and was just a still image of myself smiling. I became angry at this point. What is wrong with you? I said to it, hoping it would stop. Just go the hell away, I growled through my teeth. Feeling rather violent, I stared back into its eyes, trying to counteract that incessant grin with my anger. No. Its mouth didn't form the words, but the sound just streamed out of it. The ringing got louder and louder. I tried to cover my ears, but it felt like it was coming from inside my head. The voices began circling me and taunting me, and that terrible ringing. Then it all just stopped. Was it over? I just wanted to go to sleep, so I could continue my broken life. It started laughing. A laugh that sounded unmistakably like my voice. But it was a sound I had never made before. A sound like true laughter. This was new to me. It bothered me. I was envious. Why can't I experience this kind of happiness? He bothered me. I had enough. The voices all faded away, but the mirror kept smiling. "Stop!" I yelled as I punched the mirror. The blood was quick to run down my arm, and a few pieces of mirror were stuck in my hand. I could feel them scraping at the bone. The remnants of the mirror on the wall reflected nothing but my angry scowl and bloodied arm. I stared at my hand. It didn't hurt, but I could lightly see the reflection of my own face in the bloodied shards. It still smiled. It still smiled. No! I slammed my hand against the counter. Blood spilled all over the room, on my shirt and face. And so it happened. Blake had snapped, though in his own mind he was trapped. Broken and confused, he wanted to die, but all he could do was simply cry. The lights flicked off. His mother shrieked in the other room, scared as though she could feel her impending doom. His father had been up all night drinking while Blake was pondering and thinking. The sound of the window outside smashing rang in his mind, terrifying, echoed the crashing. "Now of all times!" Blake shouted furiously. We entered Blake's house to a horrid scene. The smell of blood. Nothing was clean. The sanctity of his mind and his house violated. With adrenaline and fear, his pupils dilated. Sprinting to the kitchen, he grabbed a tool. A knife, very sharp, for he was no fool. Not afraid to risk his life, with nothing to live for, this life, and the criminal he did abhor. Creeping through the house to find the thief, he heard a loud scream, though very brief. In his parents' room, he finds two mangled corpses, the floor already soaked in blood. His parents had been completely mutilated. Each of them had been stabbed numerous times, now slumped on the floor, eyes still open. A figure stood over top, the lifeless corpses that were once his parents, hunched over with a bloody knife in hand. The tall man was half visible in the moonlight that came through the window. His skin, fair and pale, his face was itself a conundrum. It was an inexplicable quality. His face looked off, like an optical illusion where all you can do is stare and ponder. His fingers were skinny and the joints looked massive in comparison. He looked almost inhuman, but he was unmistakably a man. "Awkward," echoed in my mind, perhaps for lack of a better word, as he edged towards me. "You didn't," I said to him. "You're welcome," I stated in a soft, warm voice, to Blake, who accepted my words without much choice. I followed him to the kitchen. As he put the knife down, the blood dripped from his hair as heavy as a crown. "It's done. It's over," he quietly muttered to himself. "We can sleep now." He put the knife on the shelf. I climbed back out the window. Never there was a mess. As Blake walked, he had no more stress. His house unviolated, but his mind still tainted. To his new life, he will never be acquainted. My wits came back to me. Cold blood streamed down my arms. I walked calmly to the bathroom and looked in the cracked and bloody mirror. The counter was a mess. Between the cracks, I see my face, depressed, sad to the point of a complete bleak. The frown, that was more like it. That makes more sense to me, no longer that disgusting smile. I saw a tear on his face. It was of blood. Feeling around on my face, I felt a drop of blood. Blood on my face? Then I felt something that I did not expect. A smile. My mind twisted. Reality as I knew it broken, demented, distorted. I looked again at my hand. The shards of glass still glistened in the light, even covered in blood. I saw a piece of bone fractured. I glanced again at the clock. 3:07. When did that happen? I said, as recollections of what had just happened streamed back into my mind. Did I wake up my parents when I hit the mirror? Then reality hit me in a particularly cruel manner. For a moment, dead silence. "Mom! Dad!" I yelled as I sprinted across my house into their room. There they lay, bloody and mangled bodies, multiple stab wounds on both of them, in the torso, the chest, the legs, the knees, even the face. I hugged them, soaked in their still warm blood, yelling at the top of my lungs, "I'm so sorry! I'm so sorry!" Like a pin dropping, the tick of the clock in their room brought me to how real this was. But only one thought reverberated in my mind. This is totally going to ruin my day. After about 20 minutes, the blood grew cold and the corpses began feeling rather stale. I walked around the room looking for the next day's lunch money, and as I was walking out, I slipped in a pool of blood. With a loud crash, I continued to lay on the floor for quite some time. I silently muttered to myself, "Damn it, now I need some new clothes." I began pacing towards my room, taking off my shirt, frustrated by this inconvenience. I threw it on the floor and made a sloshing sound. Maybe I can wash it. My mother had done my wash up until now. I took a shower and put on some new clothes. Clean at last. I walked back into my parents' room and stared for a while, maybe 2 or 3 hours. It was so peaceful. This should have happened a long time ago. When I remembered that it was time for bed, I began laughing as I had never laughed before, overjoyed, more genuine than any laugh I had ever had. Time for bed. I don't have a bedtime anymore. No one to yell at me, no one to tear my mind apart. I laughed and laughed until I heard my alarm clock go off in my room. "Oh, time for school," I said with a grin on my face. But without my parents here to test me, this was no race. This house was now my place. I'm here to stay, for I'd left quite a trace.